What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Week 6 waiver wire ads. At this point in the season, the waiver wire gets really thin, and basically everyone with a role has already been added. But the bye weeks are starting now. I know a few teams have already had theirs, but more and more teams are going to be going on bye, so it's possible you need a 1-week fill-in. As usual, I'll go position by position, then at the end I'll rank them for waiver priority. Since there are so few options, I'll expand the ownership requirement just a little bit on the players that I talk about, because I went through the list one time and there were almost no players on it because, like I said, waiver wire is really thin. Also remember, I record this prior to the Monday night game, so if anything happens in that, then just check for a pinned comment on the video. Okay, let's start things off at running back with Carlos Hyde. Hyde is available in about 40% of leagues, and in a full PPR league, I'd say you can add him, but I really doubt you'll ever feel good about starting him. He's clearly the Texans' lead back, and he should be getting, 16, 17, 18 carries a game when they're winning. His problem is the same as Sony Michel and Mark Ingram, that if they don't score, they're pretty useless. He has 7 targets on the season, but 5 of them came in week 4. So he definitely shouldn't be a free agent because he's a running back on a high scoring team getting a good amount of touches. And with the bye weeks finally here, you might need a running back too that can get you potentially 16, 17 touches. So he's not the worst guy to have on your bench. Would I really, really want him in a full PPR league? No, but I guess he's fine in half PPR because he's going to be involved in the offense and he can get you by if you've got an injury or you've got a bye week. Next, we have Rashad Penny, and he's available in a little over 40% of leagues as well. And I wouldn't be shocked if some people drop him after what he did on Thursday night. But here's the thing. It was his first game back from his hamstring injury, so there was no way they were ever going to give him a really big role, and you shouldn't have been expecting him to do much. Plus, he's one more Chris Carson fumble away from getting a lot of work. Carson has 3 fumbles through 5 weeks, and although some coaches are much more forgiving than others are when it comes to that area of the game, it would be a real problem if he fumbles a 4th time this next week. So why wouldn't you want to own his backup on one of the most run-heavy teams in the league? Penny was only in on 12 snaps last week, again because he was coming off of his injury, but he was given 8 touches on those 12 snaps. So you can't tell me they don't want to get him involved in some way. So if he's out there, I would put a claim in for him. Next running back is Alexander Mattison, and this is my weekly reminder that he is a running back 1 if Cook were to ever go down. So if you have the room on your bench and you want some upside, then Mattison is your guy. And if you own Dalvin Cook, then you really should have added Mattison a long time ago. But if he's out there, I'd put him on my bench. I have Dalvin Cook in 1 out of 3 leagues. I do have Mattison because he's going to be a running back 1 if Cook goes down. Honestly, that's really it for running back. There's really not that many options on free agency, and it's why trading right now is probably your best option at this point in the season if you're looking to improve your team. You really shouldn't be looking to improve your team at the running back position through free agency right now. At wide receiver, we'll start things off with Deebo Samuel, and like I said, I'm recording this prior to the Monday night game, so if he gets hurt or he's not used at all, then just disregard this. But he's probably their most talented, healthy wide receiver. He's being targeted the most. He's within 40 air yards of Kittle, and he's already had his bye. So I wouldn't go out and claim him. I'll add him to the ads list because they like to spread the ball around over there. So the targets are really never going to pile up onto one player. And again, his value could change after the Monday night game, but I could see a scenario where he just gets you through a bye week, or you have a week with a few injuries at wide receiver and you just need that 3rd or 4th wide receiver because he is their number 1 at the moment. So there are definitely worse players you could have on your bench. Next wide receiver that I've actually seen dropped in a few leagues is Robbie Anderson, and especially after his 1 for 16 performance, which now makes 4 receptions over the last 3 weeks, I'm sure more people are going to start dropping him. But that would be a mistake. This offense is dreadful right now. It's really, really bad. But They get Herndon back this week, and Darnold should be back sometime in October. We can't know exactly how long it's going to be at this point, but it should be sooner rather than later that he returns. And when he does come back, this offense is going to look a lot better, and Anderson is going to be a great guy to have in fantasy. There's not really much he can do right now with Luke Falk, but this offense is going to surprise some people when Darnold finally comes back. So if you see someone drop him, especially after this next period of claims, scoop him up. The next wide receiver is Preston Williams. I am still Team Williams. I think he's going to have a good rest of the season, and he's another player that's already had his bye, so you don't need to worry about that at all. You'll always have someone on your bench that's getting targets, getting air yards that you can throw in there if you really need one last wide receiver. Through 4 weeks, he was top 20 in air yards, averaging 7.5 targets per game. They're not going to score very many touchdowns, and I get that. But they're going to have garbage time in basically every game. And if he's getting 7 to 8 targets, around 100 air yards every single week, then that's a player who should be owned in 30, 40, 50% of leagues, not 5%. So I'd add him and not claim him because you really don't need to claim him at this point. But he is someone who can be helpful as a piece on your bench if there are injuries, if there are bye weeks, because he's already had his bye. He's getting the targets. He's getting the air yards. So he's going to have some good weeks. At tight end, we have 3 options, and the top claim is yet again Chris Herndon. He was a top claim last week, and I doubt he's out there in really competitive leagues, but he is out there in a lot of leagues, which is crazy to me because tight end is such a thin position, and he's probably a tight end 1 for the remainder of the year, especially because he's already had his bye. But let's say you're already set at tight end. Then you don't need to spend the top claim to get him, but I would. Like I said last week, even if you don't need him, someone in your league does. So instead of allowing them to get him for free, you pick him up, and then either he or your other tight end will be great trade bait. So because of that, he's definitely the top claim. Another guy I'd be going out and claiming is Hunter Henry. I don't know exactly when he's going to come back. He did suffer the injury in week 1, and they said at the time that it should be 4 to 6 weeks. There were multiple reports on that, so I feel like it's a really good range. So he's right at the beginning of that range, meaning he could come back this week. From what I've seen, maybe in like 2 weeks is a little bit more of a better estimate, but he's Hunter Henry. He's going to be awesome as soon as he returns, and with how many injuries that offense has, he's going to get a boatload of targets when he steps onto the field. But a lot of people dropped him after the injury, and no one's really been picking him up. So you've got to go get him if he's on free agency as well. The last tight end is Gerald Everett. I had him as an ad last week. I still think he's more of an ad than a claim because I think the 2 guys I just mentioned are better. But let's say you're in a 16-team league or in a 14-team league or a really competitive 12-team league and you just have no one, you can put in a claim for Everett. I don't think you'll have to, but I think it would be a nice fit to your team. Over the last few weeks, he's been getting a lot of targets. Now, these have come in games where Goff has thrown for like 450 yards on average, so we can't expect the same sort of offensive production that we've been seeing, but he's looked great out there. And with them not being as dominant as they were last season, there aren't as many games where they're just running the clock out in the fourth quarter. So they've actually had to play catch up recently, and that definitely benefits Everett. Again, he's not a guy I'm going out and claiming in most leagues, but he's definitely a solid option at tight end if yours really just hasn't been producing. At quarterback, remember our rule for claiming quarterbacks. We don't do it in a single quarterback league, especially this week because the free agency for quarterbacks is not great. There aren't very many great matchups. But for adding, if you're a streaming quarterback, we've got Kirk Cousins versus the Eagles. Philly is the biggest pass funnel in the league. For those of you who don't know what that means, a funnel team is basically a team where they're great in one area and terrible in another, so they force you to attack the area they're terrible in. The Eagles are probably the best run defense in the entire league, but they have one of the worst pass defenses, so teams are far more likely to lean pass heavy when they face them. So Cousins should have a good game. We've got Minshew versus New Orleans. The Saints aren't a bad defense or anything, but Minshew has multiple touchdowns in 4 out of 5 weeks, and he's shown that he can be mobile, which is always great to help a quarterback's floor and ceiling. We've got Matthew Stafford at Green Bay. I wouldn't put too much stock into what you saw from the Packers defense on Sunday. They're much better against the pass than they showed. Plus, this game is in Lambeau. But with that being said, Stafford has had multiple scores in 3 out of 4 weeks, and they're coming off bye. So they've had 2 weeks to prepare for this matchup. I wish the matchup was better, or at least at home, but he's a decent option. And then we've got Bridgewater. That might sound scary, him playing in Jacksonville, but the Jaguars defense hasn't been that great this season, and it's a nice bonus if Ramsey continues to miss games. Teddy went off this week, and you definitely shouldn't expect that sort of performance every week, but he's been around 30 attempts since taking over, and he's done well limiting turnovers. Realistically, he's only an option if you're desperate, and if all the quarterbacks I just mentioned are all taken, your quarterback is on bye. Like, all of these things need to happen for you to be starting Teddy Bridgewater. But in a deeper league, it is possible you need to go here, which is unfortunate, but it could be worse. I'll go over defense and special teams this week since most people actually are streaming that. We've got Ravens versus the Bengals. Home favorites are always targets for defenses in fantasy, and although I haven't seen the line yet, I can promise you the Ravens are favored by at least a touchdown. So that's a very good thing for a home defense to be favored by a touchdown. Means the offense on the other team is going to be passing a lot, more potential for interceptions and sacks and touchdowns. So definitely the Ravens would be the top streaming option from what I can see. We've got Cowboys at Jets. This one isn't as good if Darnold does play this week, but if he's out, then you can definitely fire up the Cowboys even on the road. The Jets can't get anything going on offense with Sam out, and the Eagles just cut 10 sacks on them last week, so there's plenty of upside for the Cowboys. You've got the Panthers at the Bucks. The Panthers have a sneaky good pass defense, and they've racked up 20 sacks this season. There's a better chance that you get good Jameis when he's at home, but it's never a lock, so the Panthers could absolutely force bad Jameis to return this week. And lastly, you've got Washington at Miami. Washington isn't that great of a defense or anything, but they have 9 sacks on the year, which isn't terrible. But who is terrible is Miami. So no defense is ever a lock to succeed, but Miami is so bad that you'd want to play defenses against them, and they have sack and turnover upside. All right, let's order these guys to see who we'd be claiming first. So the order for claiming players would be Chris Herndon, Rashad Penny, Robbie Anderson, Hunter Henry, and Carlos Hyde. And then the order for adding players would be Alexander Madison, Deebo Samuel, assuming that he's still alive, and then Preston Williams. So that's it for the Week 6 waiver wire video. If anything crazy happens in the Monday night game, it's not a big deal. Just look for the pinned comment. I put the timestamps in that comment, but I'll also add any updates if there happen to be any. I'll be doing trade targets next, followed by start-sit videos later in the week, so be on the lookout for those. But that's the end of this one. I hope you all did enjoy. If you did, how about hitting that like button? And if you're new here, how about subscribing to the channel? But thanks for watching.